So good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Mealybugs in Cotton, brought to you by CottonInfo, QDAF and Dawson Ag. My name's Janelle Montgomery and I'm the Regional Extension Officer with CottonInfo based in the Guida Valley. Today I'm joined by Richard Sequeira, Damien Erbacher and Sharna Holman, and they'll be sharing their experiences with you here today with Mealybug. Dr. Richard Sequeira is the Principal Research Scientist with the Crop and Food Science Department of Ag in Queensland, and as an entomologist he's been involved with a number of cotton projects over the last 21 years. Damien Erbacher is the Director and Consultant at Dawson Ag Consulting based in Theodore in the Dawson Valley in central Queensland. He's been consulting for 13 years. He's also the DVGA rep on Cotton Australia, so that's the Dawson Valley CGA rep on Cotton Australia, and up until 2015, and he's the chair of a Biosecurity committee. He's also the Cotton Australia's Northern rep on the TIMS and Cotton Australia's rep on cotton breeding and Australian Scientific Committee. And finally, we also have Sharna Holman, who is the Cotton Technical Specialist for Biosecurity and Disease Management based in Emerald in central Queensland. And as a CottonInfo Regional Extension Officer and Tech Specialist, Sharna helps connect growers and consultants with the latest information, news, and related to biosecurity and disease management. So you can see here by the agenda, Richard's going to cover off on the current spread, identification and life cycle, damage and management. Then we'll hear from Damien on his experiences in central Queensland here at first hand. And Sharna will be looking at what you need to do if you actually find mealybug on your farm and the importance of farm hygiene and the come clean, go clean. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to put Richard Sequeira on the line and we'll be able to view his slides. Thank you. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Janelle, and welcome everyone. We'll get straight into it. The cotton mealybug, also known as solenopsis mealybug, has been around for a while now. So where are they up to now? Where have they spread? It was first reported in cotton crops in Emerald and the Burdekin region in 2009/10. Since then, it has spread south with the infestation reported in St. George, the Darling Downs, the McIntyre Valley, and recently in March this year, it has been reported and confirmed as cotton mealybug in the vegetable okra in Canada. So it is now confirmed as being in New South Wales. Biosecurity Queensland now considers cotton mealybug a well-established and endemic species in Queensland. However, in New South Wales, if you find it in your crop for the first time, you are still encouraged to report it to New South Wales DPI because Biosecurity New South Wales would still like to track the speed and extent of its spread. So why now? In 2017, we've had a mild, wet winter and spring, which favored a lot of wild hosts that support overwintering mealybugs. We've also had a hot and dry summer, which has boosted insect population growth rates. Inadequate farm hygiene in the form of volunteer and ratoon cotton in and around some cotton fields has also probably helped mealybugs to transition between seasons and crops. It's been a high pressure, pest pressure season this past one, and spraying for other sucking pests has, in many instances, impacted on beneficial insect populations depending on what type of chemistry was used to control these other pests. Identification. Solenopsis or cotton mealybug is really very easy to identify in comparison to some of the others that are commonly found. It's got these these two dark bands on its abdomen, which are, as pointed out in the arrow here, which makes it easily distinguishable from some lantana, pink hibiscus, and long-tailed citrus mealybugs as shown in pictures and from most of the others that you would commonly find around on other plants. So it's very easy to distinguish. Life cycle, the females are wingless and make up 95% of the population that you see in the field. Males are very small, about the size of white flies. You'll often see them caught in spider webs. They're winged and very short-lived, just a day and a half or so. Females lay on average 350 eggs in an ovisac, which is a mass of eggs under its abdomen, and you can see where I'm pointing out with my cursor here in the top photograph. So those eggs hatch in a couple of hours, and what you get then is a mass of crawlers that you can see in the second photo below. After that, there are two other nymphal instars, second instar and third instar, before the adult stage. And the second and third instars can be distinguished on the basis of size, as you can see in this photograph. Now, in India and Pakistan, where this insect is a big problem, they've estimated 12 to 15 generations of cotton mealybug a year. And so it's likely to be somewhat similar here, I would imagine. Dispersal. The main dispersal mechanisms appear to be wind and water. Some work that we did in Toowoomba in the last couple of years shows that even a gentle breeze of 1.5 knots can disperse crawlers and even some older instars from the plants that they're currently on. So it's easily picked up and transported by clothing and boots as well. It can be dislodged and dispersed by machinery and farming operations. Sources of infestation. It's got a very wide host range which includes over 150 species. These include cucurbits, numerous ornamental plants, cotton, okra, hibiscus, tomato, eggplant, potato, pigweeds, and various brassicaceous weeds. That's just to name a few. The main legume crops that we grow, chickpea, mung bean, soybean, do not appear to be hosts for the cotton mealybug. Now, listed on the slide here are some of the overwintering and transitional hosts that you will commonly find in and around cotton fields. Pigweed is a great example because mealybugs on this weed are not apparent from a distance because of its prostrate growth habit, but it is a good host, and you just have to turn them over, as you can see in this photograph down here, to find them. So it's a weed that you do not want in your crop or around if you're in a mealybug endemic area. The third instars and adults of this insect can survive for 6 to 7 weeks in total starvation mode under lab conditions, perhaps even longer in the soil by surviving on root residues and other plant material. What damage does it do? It's got a preference for settling on or near nutrient sinks, that is, the growing points and the developing fruit. Feeding causes yellowing, stunting, twisted growth, defoliation, damaged bolls, as you can see, and in fruiting structures, and plant death in high-density situations. Mealybug honeydew, which is often a cause for concern, will not cause the same level of sticky problems as the kind caused by whitefly, because mealybug honeydew does not contain very much trihallulose, which is the sugar that causes all these problems with its low melting point. So whitefly honeydew has heaps and heaps of trihallulose, whereas mealybug honeydew does not appear to have much at all. However, honeydew being honeydew, it will encourage the growth of sooty molds and increase the risk of lint contamination and discoloration. Here are some photographs of the type of damage that you will see in the field, and from clockwise from bottom left you can see a bowl with lots of mealybugs on it. You can see a plant with that's heavily infested, and then further, the next is a hotspot, which is dead plants killed by mealybugs, and the last one, bottom right, is actually a whole section of field that's been damaged and killed by mealybugs. From an aerial perspective, bird's eye view, you can see this is a field that's been that's got patches of dead plants right throughout. These are hotspots. So this is what one would consider a badly infested field, and a close-up of a hotspot is on the left. You can see the dead plants in the background. So mealybugs are more likely to be found in crops or section of crop that are stressed. Crops with ratoons, volunteer cotton, and other weed hosts have a much higher probability of mealybug infestation. Now, in terms of management, mealybugs are best managed within an IPM framework, and this diagrammatic picture here shows you the main components of an IPM strategy for mealybug in Australian cotton, and you can see top of the list on the top is farm hygiene. It's got a number 1 because it's the main pillar of mealybug management, followed by the conservation and use of beneficial insects. And honorable mention should also go to detection and sampling, because if the problem is detected early enough, we might be in a better position to do something about it if necessary. The other components offer intervention options, but under specific conditions or scenarios, and these will be developed. These are being developed now and will be disseminated to industry later this year. Beneficial insects, as I said, are critical to the long-term sustainable management of mealybugs, and here are four groups of the main beneficial types that we want in our crop. The Scriptolemus, you can see the adult here and the larvae, 3-banded adult and larvae adults and larvae of the 3-banded ladybird. This little fellow is a parasitic wasp. He's a very aggressive little fellow, and he is actually devastated our colonies this year. You can see a mummified mealybug there, which is a dead one with the wasp immature inside it. It's called a mummy, and you can see the mummified mealybugs in a bowl here. And finally, you've got your lacewings, which are voracious predators, and the immature of the lacewing, which can sometimes look like a mealybug, because they once they've sucked mealybugs dry, they put the carcass on their backs and carry them around. So yeah, so these are the main creatures that we rely on to control them in our fields. So what can you do in terms of managing mealybugs? Obviously, good farm hygiene is number 1, as I've said. So minimize on-farm sources of mealybug survival and carryover. Pay particular attention to weeds, ratoons, and after harvest, root cut, mulch, and if appropriate, incorporate residues. Try to preserve your beneficials from the start of the season so that you avoid flaring mealybug later on when you're managing other pests. Early detection will help in effective management. After the initial detection, determine the type and extent of infestation. It's sometimes you might feel, oh, I've just got a couple of patches, but I'm pretty sure that, and as has been shown this season, a good hard look will show you that there's probably a lot more than you think there is. Consider releasing Cryptolemus, lacewings, and or ladybirds in hotspots if the infestation is found fairly early in the season. We haven't done a lot of this experimentally, but Dan Papacek in Nambour, who runs Bugs for Bugs, is highly experienced in this sort of word, and a word with him would be useful, at least for starters, if you're going to go down that track. If insecticidal control is warranted, use only recommended options. Consider treating hotspots, but be mindful of spreading, be mindful of not spreading the infestations rather. We are developing recommendations for when, what, and how in terms of chemical insecticides that will be released later this year once we get approval from the regulatory authorities. And finally, as you'll hear later on, crop oils can be useful in managing low to moderate densities of some insect pests, including mealybugs, but these products like these will require repeated application. But please check the product label for the target pests and rates. And finally, put into practice the industry Come Clean, Go Clean protocols, which Sharna will only be too happy to tell you about soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Richard. There we go, Sharna. Are you there?
Yes. Thanks, Janelle. Okay, so you detect mealybugs on your farm. So what should you be doing? So first thing first, mark out any infested plants or hotspots. So depending on the extent of damage, it can be rather difficult trying to re-find an area of mealybugs. So marking out any infested plants can help with a benchmark, allowing you to figure out if your problem gets worse over a few weeks. Make sure you're dealing with the correct species of mealybug. So one of the ways you can do this is by emailing a picture to Richard, and he can let you know if what you're dealing with is indeed a solenopsis mealybug. So all new detections, like Richard has mentioned previously, in New South Wales need to be reported to the Plant Pest Hotline. While in Queensland, reporting isn't a requirement, however it's strongly recommended to report either to the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries or your local CottonInfo Extension Officer. So this will just allow the industry to better respond to where this pest is spread and respond appropriately. So most cotton fields already are checked twice weekly, however it's really important to keep an eye out for anything unusual. If you do find mealybugs on your farm, it's important to keep regularly monitoring these areas and check for any key beneficials that may be helping control and manage the situation. Ensure you practice Come Clean, Go Clean. So while mealybugs can easily be dispersed by wind or water, the movement of machinery and people can rapidly increase the rate of spread. It's important to wash down machinery going from heavily infested spots to fields without any mealybugs. While in terms of people movement, clothes can also carry mealybugs, so consider changing your clothes, or better yet, and maybe more convenient, carry a stiff brush with you to brush down yourself after entering a field with mealybugs. And plan to visit fields with mealybugs last to prevent the spread of mealybugs as much as possible. So farm hygiene and post-harvest is an incredibly important part of controlling and managing mealybugs. As Richard pointed out, the first steps growers should be looking at to prevent and minimise the likelihood of mealybugs being found on farms is to ensure good farm hygiene and post-harvest management, including the control of weeds and volunteer cotton. So farm hygiene is really important, as mealybugs have a very wide host range, with weeds and volunteer cotton being a host. In a survey done in Emerald in 2010, when mealybugs were first detected, fields which had weeds and volunteer cotton were associated with a higher incidence and infestation levels than those free of weeds and volunteer cotton. So while a clean field does not guarantee immunity of mealybugs, due to the fact they are easily moved and transported, you can reduce the likelihood of mealybugs finding your farm to be the perfect spot by making sure it's relatively clean of weeds and volunteer cotton. Ensuring you have a farm free of volunteer cotton and weeds doesn't just help with mealybugs, it's really important for the control of other pests which can overwinter on the property. So crop destruction needs to be 100% to minimise on-farm sources of mealybug survival and carryover. So root cut, mulch and incorporate crop residue when appropriate after harvesting infested areas. Escapes when root cutting are common, especially when volunteers occur just outside of the plant row and when equipment is set up poorly. So on the photo in the right is a field from Queensland with several hotspots. So on a closer inspection at the hotspot, you can see where the initial infestation began on 2 volunteer cotton plants from the previous season, which were not properly destroyed, providing a green bridge for mealybugs to survive the winter. So this photo here really does just show the importance of really good crop residue control and post-harvest management. Also reconsider non-pupae busting tactics if you're planning on growing cotton again in the same or neighbouring field within 1 to 2 years. And it's so important to ensure you, any workers, contractors and agronomists are practicing come clean, go clean. So like previously mentioned about personal hygiene, make sure you brush down after visiting a mealybug field and try to visit fields with mealybug last if possible. But farm equipment entering hotspots pose a big risk for spreading mealybugs around a field and cotton growing region. So with it being close to picking in most regions, I'll use pickers as an example. So pickers can easily suck in and harbour mealybugs, so ensure, if possible, you pick these fields last. And if you do come to a hotspot, consider just lifting the picker heads. Plants that are infested with mealybugs are already quite stressed, so cotton yields coming off these few plants are probably not the best to start with. So make sure you clean down pickers after using, or if you've got a contractor coming onto the property, stop them at the gate. Make sure the picker's been adequately cleaned down. So CottonInfo recently released a cotton picking hygiene video on the CottonInfo YouTube channel, where St George's Peter Blockman showed some of the hidey holes in a picker that can be a place for trash and consequently mealybugs to hide. So I definitely recommend showing this video to any growers, workers, agronomists. It's a 3-minute video, so it's a really quick thing to watch, but it'll give a great idea of where they should be looking for when a contractor picker comes to the gate. Make sure your come clean, go clean requirements are communicated and enforced to everyone coming onto the farm, as farm hygiene and biosecurity practices play a really important role in minimising the spread of mealybugs around a cotton growing region. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you very much, Sharna. And I'm just now going to try to get Damien Erbacher back on the line. Damien's based in Theodore, a consultant with Dawson Ag, and has been managing mealybugs since 2010. So thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Janelle.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, as Richard said, the main influx was back in 09, 010, mainly in emerald. But in the Dawson, we had some sightings, pretty wet years that year and the next year. We had mainly in the first year actually citrus and some pink hibiscus, but there was some solenopsis as well. Since then, it's yeah, just the odd hot spot. Definitely all the time it's associated with volunteer cotton or ratoons cotton, as Sharna gave examples of, mostly down the side of the hill, etc., sides of fields, also, yeah, Great Harbour. But this year, as Richard alluded to, high insect pressure year, a lot more spraying happening. Then Christmas time, you know, a lot more heat, etc., and considerably less beneficials happening as well. So here in the Dawson, basically every field had mealybugs, and you might be just a smattering, a few plants here and there, but as the season's gone on, they've continued to, you know, just continue to breed and spread. We had a long season, open bulgur tree planting window, cotton from August to end of December plantings, and consequently just that green bridge, as both Richard and Sharna alluded to. So yeah, we've got some pretty bad kind of examples, as I'll show on the next slide. Thanks, Janelle. So, you know, how serious are they? They have very, potentially to be a very serious pest, and extreme, really, yield penalties potentially. So this field is actually, as seen in the picture, is actually conventional cotton, and right from the start it was planted late August, and yeah, we had a smattering of mealybugs right throughout this field and the field to the left, which is a Bulgur tree field. Both fields were late cotton last year, so once again there was a relatively small time frame between picking last year and planting this year. Also, the fields where the destruction was considerably later than after picking, and which I think aided to it considerably as well. So in the picture here, you can see on the right-hand side of the cotton, all the brown, that's all dead cotton. And started in a hot spot up in the top, we believe, and yeah, spread from there. So yeah, like it's severe. Well, there's just no cotton on that at all. And in the end, they just exploded after New Year, and there was just crawlers everywhere. And in the end, they just kept moving to the left, and we had hot spots. You can kind of see in the picture, hot spots poking up all over the place. And yeah, we think that's mostly from the spread from boom spray, and yeah, going from there kind of thing as with seasons gone on. So yeah, very destructive. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks, Janelle. So how to manage it? What have I been doing? Soft as possible, and farm, as both Richard and Sharna said, like farm hygiene is absolutely imperative. It is the start of you know, everything really. Soft as possible with insecticides, which can be difficult sometimes depending on what species of insect you're chasing. Obviously, you know, influxes of green veggie bugs, cottonseed stoners, things like that are, you know, obviously much harder to control and need higher rates of pesticides to control them. But yeah, it's about trying to go as soft as possible. I use crop oils regularly on low populations, and even hot spots as well. You know, just really targeting. If you find a hot spot, you really need to kind of control it. And so far, yeah, I've just kind of used yeah, good rates of crop oils or detergents as well. Seem to, you know, work really well. Another option is, if you know, small kind of just single plants that you might find, is to actually pull them out and burn them. But you do have to be careful, put them straight in a bag and just burn the bag and everything as well. So any very easy spread, any kind of movement at all, and which is extremely difficult as a consultant or anybody walking into the field if you want to be monitoring those hot spots or anything like that for predation type activity. Yeah, your potential to spread is huge. But we kind of found this year, as alluded to in the previous slide, I think boom spray kind of spread them fairly well. The other big issue that we've found is actually finding those hot spots. So it's kind of easy on the edge of fields and things like that. But as any consultant would allude to, you know, if you've got a 1 kilometre to, you know, long runs, you can't be everywhere in that field. So we're kind of looking at practices of the old practices of fusarium wilt. So if your employees are on tractors through the field, any kind of noticing any kind of difference in the field, lower spots, because they can be very difficult to actually see until major infestation occurs. You sometimes will see as the plant starts to die, it just goes, you know, slightly bluer colour. But yeah, just paying particular attention is extremely important. Next slide, thanks, Janelle. So overall, I guess for everybody else, just being extremely diligent. So, you know, can't underestimate the the damage potential of this pest and how quickly it does change once your predators go for whatever reason. Yeah, they just can explode, and within a couple of weeks, your whole field can be in trouble and such. So, and as both Richard and Sharna have said, farm hygiene is the initial key. Any raccoons, in our experience, as Richard said, pigweed is a massive host, along with bellvine nosed, and then probably our next kind of major pest would be fleabane for us. But pigweed and bellvine are massive hosts. And also in our area, I think going forwards, that green bridge type scenario, even with cotton plantings, has huge potential for exacerbating the mealybug problem, along with other pests as well. So yeah, that's I guess my story. Thanks a lot, Janelle.
Thanks very much, Damien. We just got a question came in. I'll just flip back to this picture of this field, and the question is actually, how long did it take when you first noticed the mealybugs as till when it was actually quite the biggest infestation and destruction in this field here? So it was a time frame.
Like the mealybugs were there really right from the start. So we noticed over the years, I've noticed over the years, obviously they're harbouring, some of them harbour underneath the soil, and even if you don't have a raccoon there, but if you got that close late cotton type scenario and then an early plant, they can just come up and tend to find them staying underneath the soil for a while. Don't know whether it's the temperature or just the plant's not big enough or something, but tend to notice them start to come up onto the plant about 6, 7, 8 nodes. And then, so we kind of controlled them with oils to start with in this field, but there was this hot spot. And we kind of, for a number of reasons, we're not unable to control it. And then the main explosion happened from about New Year. The predators just disappeared. We had to spray for heelers and as well as murids, and they just exploded after that. And within about 3 weeks, they would spread completely to the left, and as well as into the neighbouring field as well. So that's they went really quickly when it happened. So but before that, it kind of just stayed in that spot, although those hot spots throughout the field, we believe that most of that was come from just a boom spray, moving them as well. So hopefully that answered the question. Thanks.
Thanks, Damien. We're actually going to open it up to questions now. I'll just flip through. So if you can just type your questions into the control panel question box over on the right-hand side here, and I'll ask those questions directly. I've got another question that's come in already. What are we looking at chemical-wise to control these mealybugs? So we might direct that question in the first place to Richard, and then Damien, you may like to comment.
All right. We have been working on chemical options for the last couple of years now, and we have now identified. Well, I can say that I can verbally state it, but I can't put it in writing yet. That's the problem. But we are working on getting a registration for Movento, and Movento plus oil works really well on mealybugs. Transform also has good efficacy on mealybugs, but not to the same level or extent as Movento. So, for instance, if you had a mirrored problem and you decided to use Transform, that would definitely have a good, suppressive effect on mealybugs in the field as well. So it would be a good choice in that sort of a situation. Whereas if you had hotspots or a section of the field that is quite heavily infested, then Movento plus oil would be the product of choice. But I should stress here that at this point that we are developing guidelines, and those guidelines will make clear that if you're maybe 3 to 4 weeks from defoliation, I think it's probably a bit late to be thinking of chemical control of mealybugs at that stage, because yeah, I'm not sure how much good that will do, because the damage is already done. So, but yeah, I'll probably ask you to wait till these guidelines come out later this year. If we can get the registration applications in and maybe a permit for transform, then we can certainly put that sort of stuff in writing. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you very much. Another question here. If we do find a hotspot, what do we do to control them?
Again, I can probably take a stab at that. Now that depends on a number of things on when you actually find that hotspot. When is it detected? If it's detected from before squaring in very young cotton, then obviously you've got a problem, because those plants will surely die. So you've got to do something about it, because there won't be a lot of beneficials around that early in the season. Now, if you're finding the hotspots somewhere between after flowering and before, let's say, till about 4 weeks from defoliation, then that's when then you have to then take into consideration, do I have other insect pests in there? Do I need to manage for whiteflies or mirids? And then chemical options sort of come into play. But even so, you still need to tread softly so as to conserve as many of your beneficials as you can. Now, the good thing about these two chemical control options that I've talked about, Movento and Transform, we've done a trial now just in the last few months where we've actually assessed the efficacy of chemical with and without the aid of beneficial insects, and they do work very well. So, by which I mean even 2 applications of Movento do their job, but then the beneficials are still around to come in and sort of tidy up after that. So the system works very well with these 2 chemicals in conjunction with beneficial insects.
I'll add to that. Thanks, Janelle. I mean, one option as well is, like, if you do have really good beneficials in there, like lady beetles, cryptolinus doing that, there and everything as well, is if you got those hotspots, maybe obviously impossible with a plane, but if you're using a boom spray and you have to spray for mirids or whatever, is just even leaving those hotspots, not actually spraying them, so you're helping those beneficials to stay there and maximising their efficacy as well. It's something we've been kind of thinking about. We haven't done that, but I've had really good success with Biopest as well. So like lower infestations or things like that as well. So yeah, it's done a good job.
Yeah, I agree, Damien. That's really good advice as well. Yep.
And another question here we've got is the the honeydew that mealybugs produce as bad as a silverleaf whitefly honeydew?
No, I can take a stab at that. It doesn't appear to be. There isn't a lot of actual quantitative information on the breakdown of mealybug honeydew versus whitefly and comparisons, but what information there is in the literature suggests that whitefly honeydew is very sticky because of the sugar trihallulose, which is in high amounts in whitefly honeydew, whereas mealybug honeydew does not appear to have nearly as much, or in fact any, trihallulose, according to CSIRO work that's being done currently in Narrabri. They're in the early stages, but the work they've done to date seems to suggest that it doesn't have a lot of or any trihallulose. So it shouldn't be sticky, but it's still, if there's a lot of it, it will encourage sooty molds and stuff like that, which is true for all kinds of honeydew.
I'll add to that. Thanks, Janelle. We had where you start to get a lot of honeydew or mealybugs happening is when it comes to defoliate. So in our experience, really defoliation did a very poor job. And we had a lot of kind of trash. We haven't had that gin yet, but we had a lot of trash type problems, and just not getting good leaf drop. It might be because of that. Molds and things like Richard was saying, but we had a lot of trouble with defoliation in those fields.
Thanks, Damien. And just another question, sorry, going back to chemical use, it's just saying a question, is there any early season suppression that would be useful in preventing mealybug?
Damien, why don't you have a go while I think about it?
As I said a few times, crop oils. And in this case, I've never kind of used canopy as such as other people have, but Biopest has worked really well in combination, and I stress in combination with especially lady beetles for us. I haven't in our area had a lot of cryptolinus kind of come in, although I've just noticed fair few getting around today, but most through the season. Not a lot of that, but obviously you get a lot of lady beetles, sometimes lacewings, things like that. Biopest has kind of worked really well in those situations. So where you just walk into a field and you notice a plant with just one or two on it, and a smattering like that throughout the field. Biopest has done a really good job with coverage. You need good coverage, as Richard will allude to.
Yeah, I can add to that, certainly. Yes, oils, crop oils, no, and we've tried them at around 5% volume for volume. We started around 2%, then went to 3, then to 5, and we find that at 5% we got one instance of a little bit of phyto in the glasshouse from canopy, but so far nothing from Biopest oil. But crop oils can give you anywhere between 15 and 30% mortality of mealybugs. But as Damien said, and I can't stress it enough, if you're going to if you're spraying for mealybugs, high water volumes is the norm, is the bee's knees. The higher you can go, the better. We've done our work around 250, 300 liters per hectare, and then at that rate, you need it works well. Even the oils work well on low density populations.
Thanks, guys. We just had another question with regards to the field, Damien, that was in the photograph. If you were faced with that scenario again, what would you do differently now?
We did the right thing right from the start. So as I say, it was about 7 or 8 node cotton. We had that low population throughout the field, and I mean low, like just every maybe every 10 meters or so, you just get a couple of plants with 1 or 2 adult mealybug females on them, and we used Biopest at 3 litres a hectare, and that did a really nice job. But we had that hot spot, and we had planned to come back with a higher rate of Biopest and really concentrate on that area. Circumstances kind of didn't happen, and we couldn't get it on then, and it's light soil, so we're kind of up the water, and then we couldn't then when we could get the boom spray on, yeah, the product wasn't available, and it kind of exacerbated from there. But that is key. Like that, what I would have done in hindsight, we would have been better off waiting to instead of irrigating, but to just get that boom spray on there and yeah, really kind of take control of that hot spot. Yeah, that's the only thing we could have really done. So yeah, that's it really. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we might have to pull that up now. If anyone has any further questions, obviously you'll be able to contact our presenters here today, Richard, Damien or Sharna. Rightio, so I'm just going to wrap this up. This was a quite a good little just summary, I guess, of what we've covered today and looking at the risk factors for mealybug. So remembering this webinar is going to be recorded and you'll be able to come back and look at these, but basically we've got the different things that factors, I guess, that are higher risk for mealybugs versus those that are low risk, which we've talked about today, and I'll let you go through those. But in terms of best practice, we want to monitor for the presence of mealybug along with other pest monitoring, including those areas that are under stress, where those populations might first develop in the lighter soils or tail drain areas. Monitor the abundance of adults, nymphs and natural enemies over time to give that picture of whether the mealybug population is increasing or decreasing. Consider the release of cryptolemus and lacewings in hotspots, and be mindful of spreading infestations with machinery and the movement of people through those hotspots. Put into practice the industry come clean, go clean protocols and report any cases. And we do encourage you to just let your local regional extension officer with CottonInfo know if you have seen any sightings, just so that you can we can track locally where the mealybugs are moving. Further information, obviously CottonInfo website, www.cottoninfo.com.au. There's a blog there on the mealybugs. The Cotton Pest Management Guide is also available online. And the Beat Sheet blog is a great little website that has all sorts of information and the latest information, I guess, on all pests around cotton and other crops. As Sharna alluded to, there's some really good videos that CottonInfo have put out recently. Some of those are just on the mealybug hotspots and different things that we've gone through today in video form, a couple of minutes. But this particular one, how to check your picker, is clean. It's a really good one, and again, show it to your staff, contractors, etc. And that's backed up with a good fact sheet. I'd like to thank our presenters, Richard Sequeira, Damien Erbacher and Sharna Holman, very much for their time today. And it's great to have these guys share their time, knowledge and experience with the industry.